like to welcome all to tonight's special forum entitled Justice for Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi. A brief description about this program tonight. This forum is not merely a forum for discussion, but also an expression of solidarity with the universal seeks to reflect on the broader implications of governance, freedom, reconciliation, and the future of reform movements across the Muslim world. We are deeply honored by the presence of the distinguished international guests and delegation leaders from across the globe who are with us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially commence tonight's program, we shall begin with a special video presentation. I'd like to invite everyone to direct your attention to the screen.
From the town of El Hama in southern Tunisia, a young man emerged carrying great questions about freedom, identity, and human dignity. His name was Rached Ghannouchi. From an early age, he became involved in intellectual and political work, believing that Islam and democracy are not enemies, but can come together in a civilizational project that ensures freedom, justice, and human rights. In the 1970s, together with his companions, he founded a reformist movement that called for political pluralism and rejected authoritarianism during the era of President Habib Bourguiba, but he faced persecution and imprisonment. And under Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, repression became even harsher. Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi then spent long years in forced exile, traveling between capitals while defending Tunisia's cause for freedom and the right of peoples to democratic and peaceful political participation. After the 2011 revolution, he returned to Tunisia to a massive popular welcome. He took part in building a new democratic phase and called for national consensus instead of exclusion and conflict. He was one of the key architects of the national dialogue in 2014, which helped Tunisia avoid chaos and division, and was later awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015. But the democratic path suffered a setback on July 25, 2021. That day, Sheikh Ghannouchi rejected what he considered a suspension of the constitution and elected institutions, reaffirming his commitment to the democratic choice. Then came the night of April 17, 2023, the 27th night of Ramadan, a sacred night for Muslims. On that night, Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi was arrested from his home after statements calling for rejecting the exclusion of political opponents, warning against division, and urging unity and civil peace. Since that date, heavy judicial rulings have followed against him, reaching the equivalent of nearly 80 years in prison against an 84-year-old man, in cases widely described as politically motivated, targeting a voice that continued to defend democracy and dialogue. Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi was not only a politician, but also a thinker and writer. Among his most notable works are Public Freedoms in the Islamic State and Democracy and Human Rights in Islam. In his writings, he defended the compatibility between Islam and democracy, as well as civil society, pluralism, and freedom of difference, emphasizing that authoritarianism is the greatest enemy of nations. And despite prison and restrictions, ideas remain stronger than chains, and the voice of freedom remains higher than the walls of prisons. Thus continues the journey of Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi as an important chapter in Tunisia's modern history, and in a long struggle for freedom, democracy, and human dignity.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's forum features two distinguished panelists. First, we are honored to welcome Honorable Dr. Salam, former Foreign Minister of Tunisia, prominent intellectual and leading political figure with deep involvement in Tunisia's democratic transition and contemporary political developments. We are also privileged to welcome Madam Nurul Izzah Anwar, Chairperson of Polity, well known for her long-standing advocacy on governance reform, democracy, human dignity, and social justice. And tonight, the moderator will be Dr. Ahmad Badri Abdullah, Deputy CEO of IAIS Malaysia. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished moderator and panelists. I pass the floor to you, Dr. Badri.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Okay, both are okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, ladies and gentlemen, ikhwan and akhawat, bismillahirrahmanirrahim, distinguished guests, respected scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of IAIS Malaysia and our partners for on a very deeply consequential moment. Not only for Tunisia as a country, but for a broader discourse or conversation concerning democracy, political pluralism, and also freedom in the Muslim Ummah. I think just weeks ago, Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi marked the 3rd anniversary of his incarceration, and on the 17th of April 2026, there's a powerful message released from his prison cell in which Sheikh Rached warned that Tunisia now had drifted from one of the promising democratic transition just after the one political figure, and I guess the concerns is on the future democratic process in Tunisia, independent of the judiciary, and also the shrinking space for not merely to discuss Tunisian internal politics, but to reflect on a larger question on governance, political legitimacy, and also future democracy in the Muslim world. So we are honored to welcome two distinguished speakers with us today. Firstly, His Excellency Dr. Rafiq Salam, former Foreign Minister of Tunisia. Thank you for being with us today, Doctor, all the way from London. And also Madam Nurul Izzah, Deputy President of People's Justice Party and Executive Chairperson of Polity. And thanks for both of you joining us tonight. And the format for our discussion tonight is straightforward. I will pose question to both of the panelists in 2 rounds, and then I will open for open interactive session. So I will begin the session with a question to Dr. Rafiq. Dr. Rafiq, Sheikh Ghannouchi's latest prison message that I mentioned described Tunisians' trajectory marked by exclusion, he mentioned that, and institutional erosion and the narrowing of political space. From your observation and from your perspective, how should we understand the causes of this democratic reversal since 2021? And maybe you can update us on the latest development regarding Sheikh Ghannouchi and his health, and maybe initiative to advocate for his freedom and his right. Over to you, Doctor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf al-mursaleen. Distinguished scholars, experts, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm glad to be with you tonight, and I really appreciate the effort made by the Center and the creation of Forum Justice for Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, and I'm glad to be with you as well, with our sister Noor Al-Azzat in this conference. Of course, your question is very reasonable. What are the causes of this step back in Tunisia? The general perception 2010-11 after the Tunisian revolution and what is called the Arab Spring. Tunisia was in vanguard. We succeed, to dismantle and to topple a heavy despotic regime. And then we open the perspective for a new, nascent, emergent democracy in a region which is cursed with political despotism and dictatorship. And the general perception that Tunisia is moving in the right direction. And it was right, The Tunisian democracy survived for 1 decade, 10 years. Before this democracy was crushed by an adventure man called Qais Said through a coup d'etat in 25th of July, 21st. He frozen the parliament and then dissolved it, delete the constitution, and impose a new authoritarianism. And it's still nowadays, leaving this polarization between the trend of freedom, emancipation, democracy, and the trend of political despotism. And what happened in Tunisia actually is a real, a counter-revolution. But unfortunately, it takes the form and the slogan of a new revolution, in the name of a new revolution, of reform, of fighting corruption. It imposed itself with a heavy hand as a new nascent dictatorship, and going back to the previous or pre-revolution era of Tunisia. I think at least there are 2 factors. The first one is the regional environment. Unfortunately, the Tunisian democracy survived within a very risky regional environment when we were surrounded and still surrounded by heavy dictatorship all over the region, in the neighboring countries, in the Middle East, what is called the Middle East, in North Africa, everywhere. So it's not easy, to move against the trend of the region. With the external intervention in Tunisia as well in other countries of the region, what happened in Egypt in 2013 affected the whole regional environment. In 2010 to 2011, it was the beginning of the start of a new trend in the whole region. And the message that was sent from Tunisia that democracy is possible, what is called the Arab exceptionalism, it's not true. We shattered, the old postulate that democracy is not valid and can't survive in the Arab and the Muslim world, mainly in the Arab world, because there are different forms of democratization in the Muslim world, and Malaysia is one of them, Malaysia, Indonesia, Turkey, but the Arab world is a full exception. And I think this is due to at least 2 elements. That part of the world, what is called the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, was cursed by 2 factors, the oil and Israel. They imposed the whole political climate in the region. That is why it is not easy, to implement democracy. And when you have a democracy, you move against the general trend as a whole in the region. This is the first element. The second element, as I said, it's a counter-coup, counter-revolution, a coup d'etat, which reflects what happened in other Arabic countries, what is called the Arab Spring, shattered by coup d'etat or dismantled by coup d'etat in Egypt, by civil war in Libya, by civil war in Yemen, as well in Syria at that time. So we are affected in one sense or another by the regional environment. So to summarize, I think there are at least two factors. The regional environment, which is related to the external intervention, mainly from the Gulf country, what is called the axis of despotism, or the club of despotism in the region. They are united, a united front, which is, which has the capability, the means, the money, the media, and they can't, impose on the whole regional environment. The other element related to the internal dynamism with this coup d'etat, which took the face of a new phase of Tunisian revolution.
So thank you, Dr. Rafiq, for enlightening us on the factors that lead to the current situation. I would like to move to Madam Nur Izzah. Madam Nur Izzah, I think Tunisia was once celebrated globally as, I think, perhaps the most hopeful democratic outcome of the Arab Spring last time. And then recent development, including imprisonment of opposition figures, and suggests a significant democratic regression. So from Malaysia's perspective, and what lesson should emerging democracy, we have our friends from Bangladesh here, many of them here, could we draw from Tunisia's experience about the fragility of democratic institution and constitutional safeguards? Over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I just want to say thank you so much kepada Dr. Sheikh Azman. I don't know if you guys know, but it was based on our conversation. Dr. Sheikh Azman really wanted to do our bit, whatever we could do, and to all of you who have made it for our beloved Sheikh, Dr. Sheikh Ghannouchi, who's really the Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, who's really the original Muslim Democrat, who really from the get-go, Dr. Badri, gave us that optimism and hope and resolve to continue doing the right thing no matter what. So Dr. Rafiq, we really would like to welcome you here. And I would like everyone to basically welcome him with a round of applause. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for making this trip. And I wanted to start because whenever we discuss these issues, right, Sheikh Rached, it's always with so much despair at the state of the world. The fact that we are, I think, even at the worst place. There's an ongoing genocide. You talk about post-pandemic and you normalize the very worst of human behavior. And we would probably have more support if it wasn't for the shock and awe in terms of what happened to Gaza. But I wanted to start with a reminder to myself and everybody, narrating the hadith, repeating the hadith narrated by Imam al-Bukhari, where our beloved Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Nabi Muhammad, stated, if the final hour comes while you have a palm cutting in your hands and it is possible to plant it before the hour comes, then you should plant it. So I think the fact that we are here, we have this opportunity to breathe, to work, to eat in peacetime should give us the resolve, to kind of speak up and do our bit. So for me, when you talk about the democratic erosion, I mean, there's no words to describe the extent, the sheer horrifying tragedy. I had the rare chance to be attending the Nahda conference at the time, Mu'tamar, in Tunisia, beautiful Tunisia, mashallah. And I remember not just a female speaker in parliament. You're talking about Sheikh Rached's ability to mobilize a movement, but also give life to a political entity. And I tell you this because in politics, there's many narcissistic personalities. But Nahda at the time introduced a psychological assessment for their future candidates. Why? Because they knew so many spent decades in prison. I just want to show to you, illustrate to you the future-oriented thinking of Sheikh Rached. You know, he's gone through, I don't know if you know, Rafiq, there was a book by Dr. Azam Tamimi, and it was translated in Bahasa Malaysia. So I went for that launch. So I'm just saying that kind of realization, who he was, who he is, who he represents. And that's why I hope that all of you understand there's no such thing as free dinner. So you eat the dinner, we enjoy this time, but after this, we need, you know, to prepare strategically. How do we bring up and elevate the campaign, the lobbying, and basically not just, of course, the plight of Sheikh Rached, but everyone who is deemed a political prisoner in Tunisia today. Now, I actually wanted very much to hear Sumaya because, you know, she's a brilliant writer, mashallah. She's written extensively on Middle East. I think if I can, Dr. Badri, moderator, I wanted to just repeat some of the eloquent representation of who Sheikh Rached is. And I don't think he's just her father. I think in a way he's a father to us all because he kind of gave that sense of confidence. I don't know if you know, when I was younger, everyone kept basically saying Islam can't coexist with democracy. And you know what can't exist with democracy? The hypocritical Western whites, because they are all about settler colonialism. But Sheikh Rached brought up that position, and I think Sumaya mentioned it very eloquently when she stated, this is last year, yeah, where my 84-year-old father, Rached Ghannouchi, embarked on a hunger strike. I want you to remember, he's 84 and he's embarked on a hunger strike in prison. His body is frail, his health fragile, yet from his narrow cell, he chose hunger, not as escape, but solidarity. He did it for Jawhar Ben Mbarak, a left-leaning professor of constitutional law. So I think we need to kind of place ourselves that when you talk about democratic transition, I think the sincere voice and positioning that Sheikh Rached and many of us hold on to does not mean that we must not denounce, attack, and go for the jugular. I see BDS Malaysia here. Go for the jugular. For those who have failed to uphold the same standards for the rest of the world. You know, it beguiles me. I don't understand why we keep on following the same rules. And of course, it's important because we adhere to rule of law. Islam teaches us patience, but we're not strategically denouncing, really doing away with the systematic strangulation that we see today. So I say this because I'm fearful. I mean, even on the issue of Iran, and again, because we must, first and foremost, when we talk about democratic values, then they can't be, oh no, it's a Sunni-Shia divide, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, I of course defer to scholars. These are the words of Sheikh Jasir Auda. There's clear-cut explanation on this, but I'm trying to say that as the hour nears, our Muslim Ummah, you got to get your act together. We've got to get our act together. I mean, even in ASEAN, we couldn't even get Indonesia to be as vocal as they should be. So yes, today your homework is we have to know what Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi has espoused. He's been our father at the forefront of championing, always putting first, you know, the fact that Islam has always celebrated these values. So I just feel that the floor is really ours tonight, where we have to figure out, yes, it coexists with democracy, but we're dealing with Western settler colonialist mindset that is destroying democracy, that is only allowing for the select white few, even in the great nation of the US, right? Because if you're brown in the US, or if you're poor and vulnerable in the US, you are going to be subject to the machinations of the Epstein class. And I say this because everything is connected. So we need to make that connections faster, because time is not going to be on our side. And I fear, like for Malaysia, inshallah, we are lucky for the next couple of weeks, but there will be a looming disaster because the supply chains are forever disrupted. In fact, even the GCC, right? We also know the new axis that has been created. And that's why, coming back to the campaign tonight, I believe Sheikh Rached has clearly clarified the importance of not just to remain hopeful, but of camaraderie. I mean, the fact that he's not even thinking of himself in the campaign. He is basically sending us a message. For how much longer do we need to be stuck in our own silos, thinking that this struggle is separate from that struggle, this challenge is separate from that challenge, when the enemy is upon us? So I think there's no clear answers, but today the fact that all of you are here allows us this opportunity to organize, coalesce, and plan the top 5 most actionable and impactful steps that we can take, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Madam Nuriza, for reminding us, all of us, on the reflection of Sheikh Rached's resolve in facing tumultuous challenges that he is facing now. I'll get back to Dr. Rafiq. I think Dr. Rafiq, today, I think Tunisia facing growing concerns over political imprisonment, judicial independence, and also restriction on dissent. And while there are also voices in the country that argue that strong executive authority is necessary for stability, this is a debate between stability and argument and debates. So, in your view, what lesson, after you experienced this firsthand, does Tunisia offer to the Muslim world regarding the delicate balance between political order and also democratic participation and process? Over to you, Doctor. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me first, give some information about Mr. Rached Ghannouchi. Mr. Rached Ghannouchi, by the next month, he will turn 85. At this advanced age, the normal way is to be in his house and with his, members of the party and his public. But unfortunately, the dictatorship deprived him of his freedom, and it deprived the whole country, all of Tunisia, all the achievement that we have accumulated during more than 1 decade since the Tunisian revolution. Of course, Mr. Rached Ghannouchi is not just a politician. He's a politician, definitely a speaker of the parliament, as well as intellectual, one of the pioneers of the Islamic reformism since the end of the 20th century, and he continuously, vigorously advancing, his view, his doctrine about Islam, democracy, human rights, civility, women participation, and to be more accurate, the effort of the intellectual effort of Rached Ghannouchi is not just to make a combination between Islam and democracy. This is a postulate. I think this is the effort made since the 19th century by the reformist movement of Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani, Muhammad Abdul Rashid Rida. They tried to combine between the values of Islam and what is called liberal democracy. I think the process and the approaches of Rached Ghannouchi is more complicated. He represented a double ijtihad, if I can say here, double ijtihad of Islam and democracy as well. For him, Islam has definitely foundations, pillars, but it is dynamic religion that has to be in dialogue, in communications with the priorities of the people, priority of the humanities, for freedom, for human dignity. As well, democracy is not a self-accomplished model. There are different ways, different modes of democracy, and the view of Mr. Ghannouchi, if democracy is functioning within a Christian, let's say, context, in a Protestant context, in Europe, in let's say Northern Europe and Britain and the United States, it functions as well within a Catholic context in Southern Europe. As well, it functions within a Hindu, let's say, Buddhist context in India, for example. And what will be the problem if such democracy could be functioning within an Islamic framework and Islamic context? And this is the main approach of Rached Ghannouchi. Islam is a dynamic religion, as well democracy is as a mode of governance, is flexible and dynamic as well. It is a mode of ruling, of governance. Democracy is not religion. So I think the dilemma or the mistake is to put Islam as a religion vis-a-vis democracy, like putting religion or ideology vis-a-vis ideology. Islam is a religion, democracy is a mode of governance. And there are, as I said before, different forms and different ways of democratization. This is the first element in the view of Rached Ghannouchi. As well, for Mr. Rached Ghannouchi, the main challenge, the main priority of him, how to live Islam in the modern context, in modern times. As a Muslim, we are not obliged to choose either to be a Muslim or to be modern. So such reconciliation between Islam and modernity is very crucial to live in our times with the values, with the principle, with the guidance of Islam. And this is the real challenge, not to be isolated from this world and to try to make ijtihad, not only for us as a Muslim, but for the whole humanity, because the whole humanity needs the answers and the approaches and the view of Islam. Going back to your question, if you remind me about your question.
Balance between.
Oh yes, the balance. This is, I think, the old and the dominant narrative that either to choose security or to choose democracy, because there is no reconciliation between the two elements. I think we discovered since the beginning of the Arab Spring the facade, what I can designate as the facade security and stability. In the name of stability, the despotic regimes in the region, harassed and oppressed people in the name of preserving political stability. But we discovered that it was, fragile and deceiving stability and security. The main stability, or the real meaning of stability, is based on consensus, on the agreement of the people, not to impose a policy state or a military rules in the name of political stability. And this is exactly what they discovered in 2011. And still, this narrative is seen, dominant within the public discourse, mainly in our region, in the Middle East or in the Arab world. So all dictators using, the slogan that are doing what are doing in the name of preserving, security and stability. So the real challenge is to reconcile between stability and democracy, because the democracy not necessarily it means, anarchism. It means also a solid stability. We may face challenges, problems, but the problems of democratization is completely different to the problems of dictatorship and political despotism. And here the real challenge, how to preserve security based on the respect of the human dignity and the respect of the rights of the people and the individuals. This is a real challenge. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. Dr. Rafiq made such an important point, because I feel that from the get-go, we're always asked to be on the defensive. We have to prove that somehow, Islam has to be proved to be pure, has to adhere to a standard set by, to be fair, former colonizers who introduced, nation state, who basically demarcated the boundaries that we are struggling or living under, who basically, pillaged. If you talk about what has been taken and extracted in terms of economic wealth, it also came with intellectual invasion. And we find ourselves, democracy is a model of governance, certainly far, far, far from being perfect. And not just that, it's also very liable to a lot of hypocritical actions by those who started, who came up with it. So I think right now it's very important to understand these differences. In fact, I would also take offense sometimes to us ask, oh, how does Islam move to the modern state? How do we make sure we're in line with modernity? What is modernity when you talk about the complete annihilation and denunciation of the UN when it fits them? So sometimes it's good for us to just take a stock, right? To realize that there's many, many spaces within the Islamic theology that is completely timeless, and take a more approach that is not defensive per se. So I say this as a young person, and I'll end with this point. When we grew up in Malaysia, usually if you study in a Malaysian university or you go to the UK, you'll be force-fed writings on Winston Churchill, right? But not many share about his genocidal history, or the fact that he's imposed so many actions and called the Palestinians names which we would never accept in the so-called modern world. And I think this is where even our readings, our understanding, and our carrying of Islam is something that we should perhaps take more dignity and pride in. And this is the lesson. So in a way, it's not just about educating others. I think beginning that process, we have to sort of educate ourselves.
So thank you, Madam Riza. I think I'll get back to you, and please proceed on your point. Sheikh Ghannouchi, I think repeatedly in his work, emphasized dialogue, coexistence, and the rejection of political exclusion. So, So, how do you see the future of Muslim democracy nowadays amidst the polarized global climate? You mentioned about the global challenges nowadays, and within the Ummah itself, especially with the emergence of what we call the political populism right now. And maybe you could also suggest how Malaysia could offer any kind of help to advance the right and freedom of Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi in any possible capacity. Over to you.
It's always scary to always propose a solution, because at the end of the day, I think we also can share case studies across many countries, but we are all somewhat grappling with the crisis and the consequences of capitalism, of democracy, of just the sheer inequality in all its forms as a creation or as a result of the system. And I say this because, our measurement, which is, to be fair, reducing inequality, GDP per capita, Sheikh Jasir Auda will remind me, well, these are still man-made as well, right? Because if your income is higher, does it mean you're sort of a better person than the person who's poorer, right? Whereas the measurement will still be on the degree of piety and how you actually go back and focus life on earth as a way to kind of go back to God. But coming back to Malaysia, I think one of the key things when you mentioned Dr. Badri is of inclusion. The fact that through this constitutional democracy that we have, firstly, it is definitely vulnerable to populism. Don't kid me, everywhere, if you have populist rhetoric, you're either extreme in your words and campaign, for sure, it is able to sweep, whether it's results in elections, whether it's outcomes, because we're also trapped in an era of social media that makes it less and less important to be deliberate and mindful in our engagements. But having said that, I think it's crucial in a country as diverse as Malaysia for us to, if you see the current coalition of Pakatan Harapan together with Barisan Nasional, I think speaking from my humble perspective, it's more like bridging the gaps, right? Bridging the different challenges and between these two entities. Because at the end of the day, I think we do need to understand inclusion really helps bring everyone to the middle. The fact that they can be represented, whether through a voice in parliament, and they feel that if I participate using the processes of the day, there's a particular outcome that makes me feel comfortable in raising my children the way I want, or so on and so forth. So I think the danger is when people feel desperate, driven. I remember the case of Allahyarham Muhammad Bouazizi, self-immolation, right? You're driven to such depravity, right? Depths of poverty that you see no other way out except to self-immolate. So I think this inclusion, rather than calling it democratic per se, although that is a system that is being practiced, I don't want to get myself in trouble. I always get myself in trouble, as you know, in Malaysian politics. But it's really crucial to put inclusion at the heart in everything that we're doing. Now, Sheikh Rached, if you see the degree of patience dealing with a former despot, I mean, he lived that ideal, right? Towards the end, he wasn't even the leader in government in that sense. There were so many sacrifices, I would say even career setbacks, that he had to kind of swallow because he had to place Tunisia and the future as the priority. So I think I don't know what will come next in the next countries, because if I see the example showcased in the Middle East, it's very hard to make sense of it. And that is why I think we need to kind of draw back to the understanding of whether it's fiqh al-awlawiyat, what are the sense of priorities that we believe as a nation takes precedence, and try to push the middle ground and sanity to prevail. Because if you allow, of course, the fringes of extremism to take hold of any agenda, it's going to be difficult to basically push forward and ahead.
Thank you, Madam Nuriza. On that note, I think thank you to both of our distinguished panelists for those thoughtful, and yeah, if you want to continue. Yeah. Please. Yeah, please, Dr. Rafiq.
Just to finalize, we received a letter from Sheikh Rached from his prison to his friend and brother, Dr. Anwar Ibrahim, because he heard from prison that we will participate in this conference and this forum. And he wrote a letter. I'll read it, unfortunately, in Arabic. It's not translated. It may be translated later on. He said, أحيي صديقي ورفيق دربي الدكتور أنور إبراهيم، وهو على رأس الحكومة في دولة مهمة مثل ماليزيا، وهذه آية من آيات العدالة الإلهية بعد أن أمضى عدة سنوات في السجن. I pass my salams and greetings to Dr. Anwar Ibrahim, who spent years in his prison, and his release and to be head of a government as a sign of عدالة, justice, عدالة إلهية, justice, godly justice. بعد عدة سنوات قضاها في السجن وكاد يهلك، وقد استهدف بخطة تدمير لشخصيته، ولكنه صمد كما تصمد الآن القوى المقاومة في فلسطين وأحرار العالم في مواجهة الطغيان. Dr. Anwar Ibrahim resisted like the resistance movement in Palestine and freedom fighter over the world vis-a-vis despotism, and he's in the right place وهو في المكان المناسب من جهة النضال من أجل الحرية والعدالة. And he's in the right position in his fight for justice and liberty. وقد تأهل لهذا المنصب أيضا بعلمه في الاقتصاد وخاصة المناصب التي شغلها في الدولة. And he take his position due his expertise in economy and within the ruling the state. وهو إسلامي بلغة العلم ينتمي إلى ما يسميه الاعتدال العنيد. I don't know how to translate, this term, moderate or dedicated, moderate. I don't know how to translate. Maybe we look at a professional translator. شاركت معه مع بداية السبعينات منذ نصف قرن في تأسيس جمعية شباب مسلم. I participated with Dr. Anwar in funding the ABIM, I think, isn't it? وامي and أبيم. Yeah. وكان هو آنذاك شابا when he was young. إن وجوده على رأس السلطة آية من آيات العدالة الإلهية التي تعطي دفقا. It gave esperance لكل مناضل من أجل الإسلام, all fighter for Islam and liberty and justice في مواجهة الفرعنة, and this is the term used by Sheikh Rached, الفرعنة والطغيان وانحرافات هذا العصر. تحية له وإلى أسرته الكريمة المناضلة وإلى شعب ماليزيا العظيم. This is, I found, it's crucial, to read this letter since it is from his jail to this conference. Mr. Rached Ghannouchi has said before, he is one of the pioneers of Islamic reformism. He combined between al-ilm and al-amal, between knowledge and action, what is called the praxis, if I use the Marxist term here. And I think the prison of Rached Ghannouchi is not the end of his journey. If I use the term also of the British philosopher Karl Popper, the power of idea. Sometimes it needs sacrifice and dedication. And what made by Rached Ghannouchi, or his imprisonment, will give another life and another perspective to his project, to his ideas, to his doctrine, to his contribution in Islam, democracy, liberty, human dignity, women emancipation. And I think the Muslim world needs these approaches at this time, when we are cursed by dictatorship, despotism everywhere, all over the Muslim world, with a few exceptions. Let's say a few exceptions, the Muslim world, and I think Malaysia is one of these exceptions. And thank you very much. وأشكركم على حضوركم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So thank you, Rafiq, for sharing with us meaningful and beautiful words from Sheikh Rached to our Honorable Prime Minister. And now we'll open for the floor to question and comments from the audience. Please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and be brief in your question. Make sure it's concise. So we'll open now here. Please raise up. We will take three first. Gentlemen here. Prof. Nazari and gentleman over there. Mike, please. Yeah, please. Gentleman over here. Yeah. So we take first three questions, please.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Najib. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm also son of Maulana Mutiur Rahman Nizami, former Amir of Bangladesh Jamaat Islami, who was in prison for 8 years and then executed by the then fascist regime. I remember Sheikh Ghannouchi from those days when we struggled with my father's case and the cases of his colleagues. He was like our father figure always. He always remembered my father whenever we met him. He used to send some gifts and some letters for my father. It was not just gifts or some olive oil or honey. It was like his passion for Islamic movement all across the world, and that solidarity with the struggle we had in different parts of the world. My struggle with my father ended in 2016. Then I was exiled as well. But we never gave hope, and the inspiration was Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, who always inspired us to keep fighting. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Almighty Allah, the despotic regime, the fascist regime, That's gone now. I came back to Bangladesh, and we are still on the way of restoring democracy. But then Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, who is the father figure of Islamic movement all over the world, if we can do something for him, we must do it. From our experience, from our struggle, we understand the pain. The whole ummah, they should feel that pain. When our leaders, when our scholars, they are in prison, and as a Muslim ummah, it's a shame on us that we keep our eyes shut. We don't react the way we should have reacted. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah will not take the ilm from this ummah by just wiping out the slates or books. It will be taken away by taking away the scholars. So he's the last living legend, I believe. So we should all gather and not only pray for him, not only just showing our sympathy, but try to do something internationally in terms of advocacy, in terms of taking his case to international forums. And we must do that. We must take members, in the legal team, in international advocacy team, and try to do something. That's my urge and our full support for the cause. Whatever we can do, we are ready. Just keep us on board, inshallah. We'll extend our full support for this cause, inshallah. And I pray that Rached Ghannouchi, inshallah, he will be released and lead this ummah again, inshallah.
Thank you, Mr. Najib. I think Prof. Nazari.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nazari Ismail from University of Malaya. I was lucky to be able to visit Tunisia a couple of years after the 2016, and I walked in the marketplace and spoke to some young people. I remember the young people said to me, one young person said to me when I asked him how is the situation in Tunisia now, and he said it's worse than when it was under Zainal Abidin. So he was complaining about the situation. Of course, the economy was very bad at the time. I read an article or report that shows that by 2025, Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi's popularity worsened, and more than 80% actually said that he is not able to manage the country. I lost confidence in him. Of course, I completely condemn the action of the Tunisian government to incarcerate him, anti-democracy. So I condemn with no uncertain terms. However, we have to acknowledge the fact that many Islamic movements, when they took political power, they then failed badly when managing the country, especially economically. Tunisia, Egypt, you can say also the current government as well. And I would say that in Malaysia, and I would say the reason is not because of them. And this we have to understand is the reason is not because of them. It's because of the systems and the values of the society that support the system. The system is capitalist-based, debt-based, riba-based. So if you have a system that is hostile to justice, and you want to govern under that system, it's going to be very challenging. And that is why a British, The Economist magazine once said, if you want to make people become disillusioned with Islamist organizations, Islamic party, you let them govern. Because when you let them govern, they will fail miserably. And that has happened as we see. So I'm asking the panelists, the Islamic movements maybe has made a mistake in trying to go for political power before making sure that the system, especially the financial economic system, is changed, and also the values of society that support the system. The values of society, consumption-based, debt-oriented, borrowing money from financial institutions, going for debts, external debts, all recipes for disasters in the country. And then when you govern the country under that system, no matter who is in power, Islamists or non-Islamists, will fail miserably. And that is not going to help the reputation of the Islamic movement. So the focus should be on changing the system, changing the values, and not going for political power straight away. I seek your opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you for answering. Another gentleman over there. Yeah. Okay. Another one to answer first, yeah? Oh, over to you.
So thank you, Tabadri. I'll answer first before the real expert weighs in, the Tunisian expert. So I think one of the things that we should also go back to is there was a reminder that sometimes we should be learning and going back to the Quran and Sunnah, not learning the history of how Islamic governments and parties have governed in the past. There's a two different things, because the latter does not necessarily represent everything Islamic. Just because you have Islam in your name does not mean that you represent the particular entity. So I think Quran and Sunnah, for one, this is my kind of feedback. And number two, I would like to kind of maybe inform all of you, there is an international committee for solidarity for Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi. So please do follow, please do be part of it, because in relation to Prof. Nazari's question, you see, if I remember correctly, Tunisia was the only country when Ennahda was part of the coalition that bucked the trend in terms of how Egypt was quite badly faring at the time, I remember, economically. But under that particular coalition, actually things were really improving. Nonetheless, notwithstanding that, there is a serious media onslaught and campaign which really attacks not just Sheikh Rached, but the entire spectrum of political prisoners and parties as being extremist. So I feel that most of the political temperature today is a reflection of the campaign that took place. This is my general impression after we spoke, because if you want to say about Tunisia, it really took and did a lot of things that was right on the checklist. And relatively, the transition was far more successful if you compare to, of course, Allah Yarham in Egypt. Unfortunately, Morsi's, it was quite a challenge to witness, yeah. But notwithstanding that, I think it's important. And also, I want to just give a shout out to Jamaat Islami, because it's also important to remember, in the last elections in Bangladesh in 2026, they actually formed an 11-party alliance. I mean, I just want to say, in terms of going through that development, throwing through that change. I met the Supreme Leader, mashallah, and I think what they've done is try to communicate on TikTok and many of the channels to tell young people our main focus is actually social work. We want to help those, even those who were slain by the previous regime. They actually help the families, and I think it's something commendable, mashallah, to the point that they actually won 77 out of the 300 seats. So of course, it's not a great win, but I think it just showcases you there are pockets of success that we can have to push for, and I just don't want us to easily be swayed by the fact that Islamists come to power. Of course, I understand. I'm also very upset. I remember from my party, I was the only lone voice issuing a denunciation on the coup when Egypt, President Morsi was deposed. I think not many parties at the time in Malaysia actually denounced the coup. We had journalists coming here basically celebrating. I say, whatever you may be, you might be a supporter or not, but no one should ever lend support to a coup. So I think that's the kind of position, but we have to also recognize the extreme and heavy vilification in the media that takes place.
Thank you. Yeah. Can I add something, based on the Tunisian experience, what Sister Azit Noor said? I think a genuine democracy could only function on two pillars, political as well economic. And I think in Tunisia we made a good progress in a post-revolution situation. We succeed to draft a new constitution, to build, new institutions in the country, organizing, free and transparent elections, 3 times legislative elections, presidential elections, as well. We succeed to organize local elections in the process of distribution of power. Because historically speaking, Tunisia is very centralized. It's a small country, and everything is centralized in Carthage, the palace, in the hands of the president. And it's not easy, to shatter this long-rooted tradition and legacy of dictatorship and centralization. But economically speaking, we didn't make an excellent progress. This does not mean that the economic situation was catastrophic. We provide the people freedom as well, freedom, dignity, and food. We provide that. The economy is not excellent, but it's not terrible. But based on what is coming after, in the post-coup d'etat, after 2021, the situation is becoming terrible. A complete failure in different fields. And I think the crisis is deeply intertwined in Tunisia. Political, economic, social, in everything. And even diplomatically speaking, the country is deeply marginalized and isolated. Because you have a president, and you can't classify him within the category of populism. As Sister said, populism affected even the old democracy, let alone a nascent democracy. I could call it as anarchism more than populism, because populism normally emerged from a democratic system. In nascent democracy, we have a kind of anarchism in name of political change and revolution and fighting corruption, but everything is becoming, worse and worse. Economically speaking as well, politically, in terms of institution, is in process. This president dismantles all the achievements that we have built after the revolution. But does this mean that the revolution or the legacy of revolution evaporated in Tunisia? I don't think so. I think the coup d'etat remains after the end of the coup d'etat. And I think the revolution never dies. Even if it will be stagnant for certain years or a decade, even 2. And this is we have learned from different, waves of revolution, including the French Revolution. If you read the history of the French Revolution after 50 years, for example, you may say it's a complete failure. The Bourbon coming back, and yes, and the political despotism coming back, everything in a full mess. But after 70 or 80 years, they consolidate, the values and the principles of the French Revolution, whatever our assessment of that experience. So to say this, I can, insist that the Tunisian revolution is still live in the hearts and the minds of the people. And I think we may be surprised of a new wave of revolution, new political change, like we have seen in 2010, 2011. It will not be a surprise.
Thank you, Dr. Rafiq. I think we'd like to allow the gentleman to ask question, then another 2 questions, please.
Assalamualaikum. This is Mahmoud Al Hassan. I am a professor at International Islamic University, Malaysia. Since Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi has been incarcerated since 2021, our discussion today is focused on his ordeal now. But I think we should not forget that the suffering of Rached Ghannouchi is not 5 years old. It's much longer than that. I lived in Britain from September 2000 to July 2007. And during my all 7 years life in Britain, Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi was in the country. And I met him several times. I listened to him many times. I remember one occasion. There was a meeting between Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, Azam Tamimi, Shah Abdul Hanan from Bangladesh, and Dr. Abdul Bari. And I was fortunate to be among them in that meeting. So when Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi asked me what I was doing, I told him I was doing a PhD. Then he told me that at that time, there were 12 PhDs being done on his ideas. And by that time, Azam Tamimi's book, A Democrat Within Islamism, was already published. So Azam Tamimi was already there. And obviously we knew that Azam Tamimi was working on Rached Ghannouchi's ideas. But what is interesting is that Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi told me that he drove 70 miles to attend that meeting. Why? Because even in Britain, he couldn't stay in one place because he was living in Britain with a death sentence on his head. So he had to hide. Even in Britain, he couldn't live in one single place. That's why when we talk about the suffering, the patience, the sacrifices of Rached Ghannouchi, we should bear in mind that it is much more than 5 years. It's for a very long time. And it's only from 2011 to 2021 that he had some respite, some relief. But his whole life has been a life of struggle. Now, how we can help or how we can mobilize, I think we people who consider ourselves Islamic, we do not belong to the 21st century. We belong to an earlier period. The reason I am saying this, we here all know about Rached Ghannouchi. Go to a university in this country, ask a Muslim student whether they know who Rached Ghannouchi is. In 99% cases, you will hear a negative answer. Nobody knows him. Why? Because we have not been able to make him known through writing, through documentary, through film, all these things, and we are not there. We are here roughly 100 people, and we are discussing it. But how can we make it to the world, to campuses, to the young generations? We are not present there. I think we need to think very carefully how to make this movement popular and how to make this movement known to the young generation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. We think we take another 2 questions. Please share.
Reiterate again. Yeah.
Another 2 questions before I let the panelists to respond.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Asif Luqman Qazi from Jamaat Islami Pakistan. And I just want to express my solidarity with Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi. My association with Sheikh, although he is much elder and a friend of my father, is spread through several decades and our meetings in various countries. I remember meetings with him in UK, in Istanbul, in Malaysia, in Islamabad. And he was such a humble person. The most touching characteristic of his personality is, despite his stature, his academic stature, his social and political stature, he used to connect with you coming down to your level and like a friend, like an equal friend. And this is, I think, a characteristic of most great people. They connect with you at your level. This was just to express my solidarity and to remember him. And I assure the family and the movement that we will do everything possible on behalf of Jamaat Islami Pakistan, anything possible, and will collaborate with the committee, inshallah.
Thank you. I think another gentleman.
Assalamualaikum. Shami Muhammad from Nepal, Islamic Sangh Nepal, President of Islamic Sangh Nepal, from Kathmandu, from the top of the world. Mount Everest. In this context, do you believe that certain steps should have been taken by us and by Ghannouchi thought and mission supporters that either remained weak or were not carried out effectively? For example, 7 points I will put before you. The first one, stronger and more sustained diplomatic pressure could have been mobilized at the international level. Number two, Arab and Islamic scholars, intellectuals, and political figures could have raised a clearer and more united voice in his support. Number three, human rights organizations could have conducted more organized legal and media campaigns. Number four, broader alliances could have been formed in Tunisia to protect the democratic process and political pluralism. Number five, his intellectual and political role could have been presented not merely from a partisan perspective, but as a part of a wider democratic struggle. Number six, his position and the details of the cases against him could have been communicated more effectively through social media and international media outlets. At last, the seventh one, dialogue could have continued with groups holding different views so that the issue would be understood not merely as the concern of one party, but as a matter of political freedoms and democratic rights. What do you say and what do you see on it? Thank you.
So thank you for all the questions and comments. So Dr. Rafiq, you want to respond? And Madam Riza, you want to respond?
Okay. We save the best for last. Go ahead. Actually, I wanted to basically, based on the interventions and the kind of reminders today, I wanted to just ask again if NASR, IKRAM, and IAIS collect and ensure that everybody please be part of the International Committee for Solidarity for Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi. So some of the great ideas, right, to make sure that it is brought more to capture the attention of different demographics that can be realized. So please, all of you, I think the campaign always needs rejuvenation. I wanted to also state that the video just now, right, I'm assuming that the Azman IAIS is responsible for the video. Yeah, so they have to be on TikTok. When it's not on TikTok, the 18-year-olds think it never existed. You know, this is what they told to me. Last elections, they said they just voted based on the candidates who are most prominent on TikTok. Clearly I wasn't, so I didn't win elections. But I'm just trying to say that it's very important because usually it's the first kind of mode of communication for the Gen Zs or the Gen Alphas. And I think what I would share just as a response, I remember when I went to Indonesia, at the time President Allahyarham B.J. Habibie he was no longer president, and he was attending an event at the Habibie Center at Badri. You wouldn't believe it, as he went to the car, the one that was accompanying him was just booze. Indonesians were just booing him like nobody's business. I mean, this man who had the courage not just introduce democratic legislation for Indonesia in a matter of less than 2 years. He basically gave freedom to East Timor, not thinking about, you know, anything else, but doing the right thing when things were difficult. And they were just booing him. Like I was shocked. It was a very, quite a humiliating moment. But then he went ahead and wrote a very impactful book about his love for his wife, who passed before him, Habibi and Ainun. And then, of course, it was made into this blockbuster movie. And as you can tell, he then became one of the most popular politicians. If you had asked me in the year that I went to visit him if this could be true, I would say, no way, Jose. But mashallah, right? And I think first it tells you the fleeting, it's very fleeting, all these human emotions. As you know, Prophet Isa, alayhi salam, I mean, he didn't even get or secure civilizational success. That's what Sheikh Yasir Kadim termed it. But of course, doesn't mean that he's wrong in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But these are perhaps lessons or just tidbits that we can kind of utilize in order to put the truth across. It's not so much about wanting to be popular, right? But it's just to make sure that the younger generation knows and follows the right leadership, the right set of principles and values. So I wanted to share the BJ Habibi story because I kind of saw it in my eyes. So I went to the booing and also the screening of the movie, which anyone in Indonesia at the time wanted to attend the premiere. You know, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on his soul. But for sure, I think these are good examples. But we really need to know this. If not, it will always be the Zionist lobby that makes full use of movies rather than us for our own movements.
Personally, I really appreciate, the level of solidarity within the Muslim Ummah as a whole with Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, including, Islamic organizations and movements all over the Muslim world. Because Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi is not just a Tunisian byproduct. Definitely, he's a Tunisian, and he represents a combination between the Zaytuni tradition as a learning, institution in Tunisia, the oldest, maybe learning institution of the Muslim world, even before Al-Azhar, and with a philosophical background. And this is what created, the specificity of the personality and the thought of Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi. And I think Rached Ghannouchi is not, his imprisonment is not a lose for Tunisia, but it is a lose for the Muslim world as a whole, because he dedicated all his life for the Islamic causes. His contribution, intellectual and political contribution, not only answer to the local interests of the Tunisian, but for the whole Muslim world. He was engaged in Palestine, in the issues of the Muslim world all over, the globe, either for the Muslim minorities or majority of society, including the Muslim minorities in the West. And I think his contribution will survive. And with his imprisonment, maybe, as I said before, it gives new perspective and a new life to his project and his doctrine. I hope so.
I think, Madam Riza, you should also mention the movie on our Prime Minister as well. Okay. Yeah. So we open for another round of questions. So another three questions. Okay, Samir. Okay, please.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much. My first question to Dr. Rafiq. Do you think that the target is Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi in person, for his history, for his struggle, or the target is the theory and the ideology? My second question is to Nur Eliza. Nur Eliza, you have long experience, and Anwar, of course, he faced the same fate of Rached Ghannouchi twice. He has been imprisoned. But now, under Madani government, he is surviving, and he was able to do something for the country. So, if you want to compare the experience of Anwar and the experience of Rached Ghannouchi, what makes Anwar you can say that, to overcome the difficulties that you are facing for the last 30 years, and make it happen here in Malaysia, why it is failed in Tunis? Thank you very much.
So second question, and team, please make sure your question is concise and precise.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Mohammed Said Islam.
Madam Reza would like to answer the first question, and then we go to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start with the second question, and Cesar will answer the first one, related to not the target, the journey of Mr. Dr. Anwar Ibrahim, which is in some aspect maybe similar to Rached Ghannouchi. I think this is the complexity of politics. There is nothing stable and guaranteed in politics, mainly in our region. We are not, making politics or practicing politics in a safe environment. We are not a mature democracy. In all democracy, you may leave, the government and going back to your home safely, which is not the case in many times, and most of the time. Doing politics, either to go to the prison, or maybe even more than the prison. It will be hang up in many cases. If you look at the experience of Egypt, of Dr. Morsi, from the presidency to the grave. Unfortunately, this is the case, and more particularly in the Arab world. We are cursed with a heavy dictatorship. And this raises many questions. I'm not convinced in the Orientalist approach that what is called the Arab exceptionism or Muslim exceptionism, that Arabs or Muslims are not in favor of democracy because they admire dictatorship and the rule of one man, which is true, not true. I think there is a certain specificity, mainly in the Middle East, or more particularly the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa, due to the presence of the external interventions, the presence of Israel as well. And the other element is the oil. They also imprisoned the political climate in the region, and it makes democracy is very, very hard journey. It's not easy to democratize, Egypt or Syria or Tunisia or Morocco. It's very risky. It's a very risky process due to the international interest in the region. And since the First World War, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the main pillars of the international policy of Western power, by either for the French or the British, is based on what is called stability, which is the deceiving concept. What they mean political stability is political stagnation, to have a heavy despot who can, control the people. And this is the old legacy of colonialism, when they tried, to control the people based on choosing sheikdoms and chief of tribes to control them. The same philosophy, it is, again and again, implemented in our region, mainly in the heart of the Muslim world, in the Middle East, to support dictators, for the interests of oil, for the interests of Israel, for the interests of polarization and monopoly of the economic and financial and resources in the region. But I think this is not necessarily eternal. Things may change, and it has to be changed. And this is, I think, one of the lessons that we have drawn from the Arab Spring. And we assume that what is called political stability under the dictatorship is guaranteed 100%, which is not the case. At the end of the day, people succeed, to topple the regime of Ben Ali, Mubarak, and even Gaddafi. And later on in Syria, if you look at the experience of the Syrian revolution, people have the feeling that everything is finished. The Syrian revolution is dead. But we have seen a second wave which toppled the regime of Assad. So to conclude, I think, of course, we have what is called political stability, but it is very fragile and deceiving. And I think this is the view, the approach of Mr. Rached Ghannouchi. The view of Rached Ghannouchi is based on the balance between stability and political freedom, political participation. Freedom for Mr. Rached Ghannouchi, it's not just an abstract concept. Of course, for him, religion without freedom is not a real religion. And freedom without the values and principles of Islam is meaningless. And this is, I think, one of the creativity of Rached Ghannouchi, is this, combination between not only democracy, Islam and democracy, but the main pillar is freedom. Freedom in the personal level as well, in the within the society or in its political level, as it is translated and implemented in the form of modern democracy.
I think I wanted to begin with what Professor Vali Nasser stated. He came for the lecture in ASEAN School of Development, I think at Dr. Badri, and he actually began to explain the differences in terms of Iran's type of governance, because you talk about at any given moment in history, there'll be that opportunity presented through a particular inflection point. So he drew the beginnings of perhaps comparing Mossadegh's leadership in a time where the Iranian parliament approved the nationalization of Iranian oil away from British petroleum. And at the time, the empire drew the most money was, from the oil rigs in Iran. He focused on domestic matters, but forgoed foreign policy. Therefore led to Churchill securing the American support that led to his downfall, right? That allowed the machinations, of course. But I think, of course, it's a generalization. But you take into today the fact that Sheikh Khamenei, Ayatollah Khamenei, focused on this positioning of supporting Palestine, but not necessarily giving the space for domestic democratic governance, right? It was the introduction of Velayat al-Faqih. But he did focus clearly. So when the time came through the attacks, which Trump led, enabled, and of course encouraged by Israel, you see the initial anger towards the government in Iran turned to a fervor, a patriotic fervor. So now, much more support in defense of the key infrastructures that were planned to be attacked by the US. So I think as a shrewd political move, sometimes there will be opportunities, but how long did it take Ayatollah Khamenei, Allah yarham, right? I mean, it took scores or decades. So you cannot assume that it will happen in one fell swoop. Now, as a segue to Malaysia, I think the opportunity was the inflection point of a severe break in UMNO. We of course set up a political party in 1999. We secured 54% of the Malay votes, but we couldn't get the non-Malay votes. So at any given moment, or couldn't get sufficient non-Malay votes. So at any given moment, Malaysia's voting pattern is quite polarized between the different races. So the kind of severe breakup in UMNO, Muhyiddin, Shafi Abdal, Mahathir, actually helped kind of broker that new realignment, which led to, of course, 2018, the first beginning before the peaceful coup, and of course 2022 with the 18 members of parliament from UMNO. So I'm just saying that, notwithstanding, I think, like it or not, at least Malaysia, there was already the beginning of transition per se, because you saw 5 states in the changing demographic support. So there's a clear-cut movement. But what's shocking in Tunisia, and again, I'm speaking from the perspective of an outsider, despite the huge success, the huge development, which couldn't even be replicated by Egypt. I mean, to be fair, Tunisia was the shining star. I mean, during the time, it was foreign policy covered it. So many media covered it. In terms of Western media, far more sympathetic. But to kill off any remaining stakeholder and to just allow a lone dictatorship is just shocking. But of course, it also happened at a time where the whole world, I mean, rightly so, we're just completely fixated and shocked on a day-to-day basis on the ongoing genocide in Gaza, even in the West Bank, even the complete, I don't know what's happening to the UN, but can you imagine the board of peace was somehow legitimized? Do you know? So it's just this series of onslaught, I think, maybe left many of us in a state of complete shock. So if you were to consider some opportunities in future, we have to somehow go back to the very beginning and understand there are different moving parts you have to work on. I mean, when I started out, it was very difficult to read Islamic history because I was always upset with the fact that Zionism started out clearly as a pariah movement. It just breaks me and breaks my heart to realize today you have a big media giant that can conveniently say that going against Zionism means you're going against, it's anti-Semitic. But how have we come here? How have we arrived at this juncture? And it's a good moment to kind of self-reflect because it actually requires a very long movement to displace and kind of detangle ourselves from the Leviathan that has kind of emasculated us all. So I mean, it's very severe. I mean, honestly, every single day I wake up and it just confronted by this reality. It's the faith, right? It's the faith that kind of carries you forward. But things are really bad, people. I mean, it's really bad. And if we don't start thinking about the other parts of the ummah as part of us, and we think that our life, our comfort, our family, what matters is our kids go to good universities, we can continue to enjoy some bits of the Western capitalistic order, then I think we're definitely going to be doomed. So hopefully from these discussions, from realizing, from also remembering that Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi is holding the candle, right? He's lighting up the candle and he's not giving up. But maybe we have to improve our campaign, our communication plan, understand and learn more about each other, know the latest, what's happening in Bangladesh. I mean, perhaps from the get-go, if you read New York Times, even New York Times for that matter, has told the story of the raping of Palestinian prisoners. But even they are facing this huge pushback of huge skill demonstrations against Nicholas Kristof. I know if you follow Nicholas Kristof, he was really following the Rohingya plight very consistently since his early days. But anyway, this is my feedback, I think inflection points, but also being very strategic in our movements. I agree, sometimes criticism because, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala measures the effort you put in. But when there is husnul zan, there's also su'u zan. And I hope that we utilize both healthily to predict the steps of the enemy, bi'iznillah.
So I think we are already beyond our time. I'm sorry to the gentlemen. I think we need to call it a wrap for tonight. So thank you, Brother Reza. Thank you, Dr. Rafiq. Inshallah. Yes, we need to do that. Okay. I give back the floor to the chairperson. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badri and our distinguished panelists for the rich, meaningful and deeply important discussion this evening. We also extend our appreciation to all participants for the engaging, interactive session and thoughtful reflections shared tonight. And also, additionally, talking about international movements, for Madame Nur Izzah, actually, Yusra Ghannouchi just texted me. He said that she wants to send her warm regards to you. Hopefully you still remember your time with her on the same stage a couple years ago in IAIS. And she says that she's watching you guys the whole time on YouTube. So, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed with the souvenir giving ceremony as a token of appreciation to our distinguished speakers and moderator. For that, I would like to invite our CEO, Dr. Said, to be at the stage to present our souvenirs. To Dr. Rafiq. And Ms. Nurul Izzah. And also Dr. Badri, please remain on the stage for a photo session. So we'll be having two photo sessions, one on the stage and the other one together with the audience. If we may have another one with the audience, can you prepare the chairs? Maybe after this. Sorry, before that, there's a special gift from Dagestan, if I'm not mistaken. Dagestan. From the Deputy Mufti of Dagestan. Nurul Izzah. First time.